Chapter 54. The Conquest of Bethel and Ai. God's promise to Joshua to help in a second attempt to conquer the Canaanite city of Ai swiftly brought Israel's leader out of his state of discouragement. Joshua immediately chose 30,000 soldiers for the strategy that he had in mind. A well-planned strategy. I am not sending you to directly attack Ai, Joshua informed the officers who were to be in command. Late at night, you are to take your soldiers toward the city. Guides will show you the way, but do not go far from the city. Go around it to the west side and conceal yourselves in the rugged country behind Ai toward the other city of Bethel, which is a few miles west. I shall send others before dawn. Be very careful that no one can be seen from Ai or from the city of Bethel to the west. I shall go with a few thousand to be in the valley just north of Ai when the sun comes up. When the people of Ai discover us, they will again rush out to attack, and we will flee from them. When you who are hiding west of the city see me waving a bright banner from the end of my spear, you will know that it is time to rush into the undefended fortress of Ai, and set the entire fortress on fire. The huge fire will attract the attention of our pursuers. Then the 5,000 soldiers on the west side and our troops hidden on the north side of the valley are to move in swiftly on the confused enemy. Joshua chapter 8 verses 1 through 13. As planned, it was well after dark when the 30,000 fully equipped foot soldiers set out to the northwest. The guides led them to a safe hiding place just west of Ai. Every effort was made to muffle the stomps, the clanks, and the jingles of marching armed men as they moved into the heights between Ai and the adjoining city of Bethel. When at last the soldiers reached an area where they could hide, they rested warily for the remainder of the night. The only fires allowed were small campfires hidden under overhanging rocks that would hide any signs of light. Joshua remained at the Israelite camp of Gilgal until after midnight. Then he set out with the elders of Israel and officers and the remainder of the soldiers. In the early morning hours they arrived on the north side of Ai. By the time he arrived, it was not far from dawn. There wasn't any time to be lost in preparing for what had to be done. Take 5,000 soldiers and move in between Ai and Bethel before sunup. Joshua instructed one of his captains. Make sure no one from Bethel hinders our conquest of Ai. Joshua and his Beit forces moved down into the valley north of Ai just before dawn. Ai caught off guard. When the light of dawn came over the area, the guards on the walls of Ai were startled to see that military forces were approaching the city from the north side of the valley. Word was sent to the king, who was still feeling victorious because his soldiers had previously routed what was considered an invincible army. When the king witnessed the Israelites approaching on the plain, he became very excited. Here, he thought, was a golden opportunity to twice vanquish the dreaded army that had invaded Canaan. Any city or nation that could put Israel on the run 2 times would be regarded as gloriously heroic and powerful. Flushed with the thought of a second victory, the king lost no time in ordering most of his men out to clash swords with the Israelites before they could reach Ai. The north gate of the city swung open, and as before, out rushed the howling troops of the Amorites to head swiftly down into the valley and directly toward the Israelites. Intending to make a great name for himself as the leader of the forces that would overcome the feared Israelites, the king of Ai himself rode out with his men. When the two forces were only a few hundred feet apart, the king noticed that the Israelites suddenly came to a halt. It seemed that they were getting ready to make a stand. But when they turned and ran away in the direction of the Jordan River, the ruler of Ai could scarcely believe his own eyes. "We've got them on the run already!" one of the king's officers shouted. "Send a man back to the city," the king shouted back excitedly. "Tell him that I order every man there, and also the soldiers from Bethel, to join us at once. We're going to wipe these Israelites out, even if it means driving them all the way back to the Jordan." Still at a safe distance away in the valley, Joshua and the soldiers with him continued to move away in pretend fear. When Joshua saw the 2nd Regiment pouring out of the city of Ai, he was certain that there couldn't be many more men, if any, remaining inside the city. Joshua chapter 8 verses 14 through 17. The time had come for Joshua to wave a bright banner attached to his spear. The signal was seen by the sharp-eyed scouts west of the city, and they motioned for the 30,000 men hiding in the bushes about them. Within minutes, the 30,000 Israelite soldiers were racing into the unmanned city of Ai. Already the men of Ai and Bethel were too far away to hear the loud screams of those they had left undefended. They were shortening the distance between themselves and the Israelites, and contact and victory appeared to be only minutes away, until one of the officers moved close to the excited king and gestured frantically towards the rear. "The idolatrous Canaanites are trapped!" The king looked around, and his expression of almost gleeful anticipation faded from his face. He gave a signal for his men to halt. The bewildered soldiers came to a stop and looked about to see why they had been ordered to halt. Then all of them saw the smoke and flames belching up from inside the walls of their own city. "We've been tricked," the king roared. "Get back to the city!" When Joshua saw the Canaanite soldiers stop and set off in the opposite direction, and saw behind them the smoke billowing up from Ai, he again waved the banner he had been holding. The men with him suddenly turned on the Canaanites. The thousands of Israelite soldiers hiding at the north rim of the valley opposite Ai leaped out of their hiding places and stormed down the slopes at a right angle to the path of the enemy troops racing back towards their cities. The 5,000 hiding in the west plunged toward the city of Bethel. Then, out of Ai itself, rushed the 30,000 Israelite soldiers who had set the city on fire to lure the enemy soldiers back. Joining the other troops, they set off directly toward the oncoming troops of Ai and Bethel. At the same time, Joshua and the men with him began pursuing the Canaanites westward. Boxed in on three sides by a rapidly approaching Israelites, the soldiers of Ai had to stand and fight, or try to race about madly to find a way of escape to the south. Those who tried to fight were quickly wiped out. Those who tried to flee up the south slope of the valley were overtaken as well. The only man to be captured alive was the king of Ai. Joshua chapter 8 verses 18 through 23. Leaving thousands of corpses in the valley, the Israelites converged on Ai and destroyed the rest of the pagans who remained inside. Not until then did Joshua lower the banner that waved from his spear. Things of value were removed from the city, and then Ai was burned just like Jericho. As for the king of Ai, he was hung on a tree for punishment for his gross idolatry. At sunset his body was cut down and tossed on the ground before one of the gates of his city, and covered with a large pile of stones. News of this king's disgraceful end was certain to swiftly reach other rulers of nearby cities, communities, and nations, and thus add to the fear and terror growing in that region of paganism. What was more likely to impress the other nations and increase their fear of Israel and their God was that 12,000 Canaanite men and women perished that day. A blessing and a curse. After the victors had returned to Gilgal with the treasure from Ai and rested a few days, Joshua declared that a special ceremony would be held in an area several miles north of Ai. All Israel made the journey over the rough country, the Ark of the Covenant being carried along as usual. The only ones who didn't go along were the few soldiers to watch over the camp and take care of the animals. The people congregated on the slopes of two neighboring high points, Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim, as Moses had commanded them. Deuteronomy chapter 11 verses 29 and 30. They watched and listened as the sacred ceremonies took place. An altar was built upon Mount Ebal of unhewn stones as God had commanded again. Exodus chapter 20 verse 25. Burnt offerings and peace offerings were made there. Joshua read to the people the many blessings that would come through obedience and the cursings that would come through disobedience. These things were written on the stones of the altar. The laws of God given through Moses were also read to the people in this solemn assembly. The voices of the readers on the mountains rang out with miraculous, far-reaching volume to the more than 2 million scattered over the area, to remind them of how God wanted them to live and of the tremendous importance of being obedient. Joshua chapter 8 verses 30 through 35. At the end of the reading of the laws, 6 tribes on Mount Gerizim summoned God's blessings for obedience. Then the other 6 tribes sitting on Mount Ebal echoed the curses that would surely come upon them if they broke the law. Deuteronomy chapter 27 verses 1 through 19. After the ceremonies, the people camped and then started the return trip to Gilgal. Israel made this journey into enemy territory and back without encountering so much as one enemy soldier. However, the movements of the people were not unnoticed, and the rulers of the lands became more distressed when they heard of this greater penetration into Canaan. For centuries, the small nations of the region of Canaan had warred amongst themselves and slain one another. Now that a foreign enemy had entered their land, the rulers put aside their differences and decided to pool their fighting forces and align themselves against Israel. Israel had no knowledge of these particular plans, though Joshua and his officers were aware that such a thing could happen. Joshua chapter 9 verses 1 and 2. While this threat to Israel was being organized, several dusty travelers one day approached Gilgal riding their burros. Alert Israelite guards went out to stop them, but brought them into the camp to meet Joshua after they requested to visit the leader of the Israelites. "We are ambassadors from a distant nation," a spokesman for the strangers declared. "We have heard how your people have come up from the south to conquer these nations in this part of the world. We have come a long way to meet you and to ask you to promise our nation, because we are a peaceful people, that you will not carry on war with us if ever you reach our borders." "You men could be from any of the nations close around us," Joshua told the spokesman. "We need proof that you're from this distant nation you have mentioned. Otherwise, it would be foolish to make a promise with you that we would refrain from attacking your nation." "We assure you, sir," the spokesman replied, "that we are not from any enemy nation. We will be your servants. We have been sent here by the leaders and people of our country, a distant one, to tell you that they have heard of the fame of your great God. They are aware of how he has dealt with the ruler of Egypt, and how he has helped you become victorious over the Amorites and the kings of Heshbon and Bashan. When our people realized how your God helped you in these battles, they knew that it would be foolish to try to stand against you on the field of battle. So they sent us to ask you to promise not to attack a country so respectful of your power and your God." "It could be as you say," Joshua said, "but as genuine ambassadors you should have some credentials or proof of whom you are." "Logical sounding lies." "We were purposefully not given any," was the reply. "Our superiors knew that if we were stopped by soldiers of any of our neighboring nations, and if it were found out that we were ambassadors on a secret peace mission to Israel, the neighboring nations would then consider our nation an enemy. In fact, for the sake of our country's safety, we were told not even to mention the name of our people. Our superiors hope that this matter can be worked out, with our remaining completely nameless for the sake of safety, extreme as it seems. Then, if ever Israel arrives at our borders, we shall make ourselves known." "I have never heard anything like this," Joshua murmured to his officers as he shook his head. "I think it's time to end this conversation and send these men away." "Something occurs to me, sir," the spokesman for the strangers suddenly remarked. "Perhaps we can at least prove that we are from a distant nation if you will examine our clothes and the few things we have with us." "I mean, it's something worth considering," an officer whispered to Joshua. "A careful examination of these men's possessions might give us some valuable clues as to how far they've traveled." After a few moments of thought, Joshua nodded his approval. The strangers were taken out to where their burros were tied up, and all that these men had was carefully examined by Joshua's competent officers. A few minutes later, the officers reported to Joshua. "Obviously, they actually came a long way," Joshua was told. "Their clothes, they're very dusty and stained with several days of travel. Their shoes are well worn as from many miles of walking. Even the sacks on their burros are old-looking as from many hours of exposure to the wind and sun. Their empty leather wineskins are dried out and cracked. They brought what food they had left, and it was hard, moldy bread that they claimed was freshly baked the day that they started out for here. Joshua chapter 9, verses 7 through 13. To Joshua and his officers, this seemed fair evidence that these men had come a great distance from a foreign land,